Welcome to Creative Bites, your go-to podcast for an inspiring mix of creativity, entrepreneurship, communications, and much more. I'm your host, Iwona Fluda, and in each episode, we will bring you compelling stories from the movers and shakers across various industries. We will discover how ideas evolve, how communication shapes our world, and how the entrepreneurial spirit drives progress. Whether you're looking for inspiration, innovation, or just a good story, you will find it here. So tune in, join the conversation, and explore the many facets of creativity with us. It's such a great privilege to have you all here today. And today we are having a wonderful discussion with Marie. We have met a few months ago already, and we have been enjoying our discussions about creativity and life and resilience and communications and so many different topics over the last months. And today we are going to talk about specific tools, specific creative tools that we use in our daily life and how they help us to be more creative, to be more grounded, to be more who we truly are. So, Marie, I would love to give you the floor and invite you to introduce yourself shortly.
Thank you, Iwona. So I'm Marie, and I'm a career change coach. I help women, but not only women, who are at a crossroads to identify and to pursue a next career path. And often they come to me because they want something more creative. So we try to define what creativity means today. And my background is I spent 20 years in the arts industry. So before becoming a coach, I worked in museum, in galleries. I designed products, merchandise for museums. And creativity has always been, I guess, my passion, although there was a time when I was completely disconnected with it. So we have talked about that in our previous conversation, and we probably will touch on it today because I have found some new tools for me that have worked to connect to that creativity. So that's me. I'd love to hear from you, Iwona.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Marie. I'm Iwona. I'm the founder of Ministry of Creativity LLC and Creative Switzerland. And I love creativity. As in your case, my creativity was kidnapped at some point in my lifetime, and it took me many years to come back to and to become creative again. And these days, I'm very privileged to use my creative powers, not just to help myself to be more grounded, creative, more of a real person who I am at the end, but also to help others to do so. And I do it through different business collaborations, especially in the business world. What I observed is that everyone talks about innovation, but we don't talk about the very crucial part of creativity that is part of innovation. Actually, there's no innovation without creativity. And my huge passion is really combining creativity, technology, and science, and creates together wonderful collaborations. Tangible examples of that are events, but also different consultancy projects I have been running, different events in general. So that's me. And Marie, maybe we can kick it off with a question to you. What was in the past kind of your biggest challenge, and how creativity and creative skills, creative tools helped you to overcome it?
So I have to go back to the time I burned out, which was 20 years ago. And at the time, we didn't talk about mental health at work, and we certainly didn't talk about burnout. And that led me to finding myself lost for many years. And I was working for a company. I was designing products. It was fun. I had worked in museum, I had studied history of art. I was in a creative space, but I felt completely disconnected with myself. And I realized later that it was also due to the toxic environment I was in, to some belief I had around work as well. And I needed to find a pathway to creativity again. So I did that first by just exploring and experimenting. And so I took a lot of, uh, I joined a lot of art classes and courses. I was living in London at the time, and I still live in London. And I went to St. Martin's School of Arts, and I joined a school. I think it was a evening course on how to design patterns, and I explored that for a while. And then there was another course that I took as well. So I was really sort of like exploring some creative, some kind of creativity, which for me was about making things, being visual. And and then it came to it was a friend's birthday, and I came across a shop in Covent Garden selling stones and beads, and I decided to make a piece of jewelry for her. And that's something I had done in the past when I was a teenager. And that really, just that action of making something, and using colors, using something visual, but using my hands. I think it was about creating something with my hands that I started reconnecting with my creativity at that point. Then there've been other tools along the way that helped me, but that's really that moment where I found my path to creativity again, and I realized how I have missed being creative um, for a long time. So that was my experience.
Thank you for sharing. And today, after so many years, what are the tools that you use to help you in your daily life, in your
So
business?
so again, I mean, I think that when I feel like I need that, I've got a thirst for creativity. I Baking again, hands on baking is something that really sort of helps me. But it's a book that helped me, and it's The Artist Way. I don't know if you ever across that book,
Yes.
The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. And if I remember it correctly, because I did that a long time ago, it's 12 weeks. And we can do it sort of like as a workshop. And I started doing it 12 weeks, and I did all the exercise. And one of the first exercise is you have to write every morning 3 pages, not more, not less. And it's the first thing you do in the morning. And I started doing that. And first I was like, I don't know what to write. But then it kind of like came flowing, because you give yourself permission to tap into that creativity, to tap into that part of your brain that sort of um yeah, is being creative. And there was a lot of things that came for me, but the exercise I loved the most, and I still use that exercise, and I still invite my clients to use that exercise, is taking yourself on a date. Because we are so busy. We are if you're someone who's has a business or is working, has a family, we don't take a lot of time for ourselves, and our head becomes so full of things that there's no space for creativity. You need to create that space, and doing something for yourself, even if it's just 20 minutes to go to a cafe you've never been to, that you come out of that experience different. You recharge, you have more energy, you have more creative space. And I think it was at the beginning of, or at the end of last year, I felt completely stuck, and I went to a cafe. I sat there for half an hour. Don't take your phone, don't take your friend, don't take no one, don't take your book, but just do something for yourself. And since then I've been taking myself to going to see a museum and taking the time to sort of like look around and walk into a shop and not being so busy all the time. And I think that's giving yourself permission to do something for yourself helps you to reconnect with what you truly love, and helps you to create headspace. And that headspace is what will give you more creativity. You'll tapping into your creativity. So often when I feel blocked, I'll just go for a walk, or I'll just go and do something that I love. And it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to take a long time, it doesn't have to be the whole day, but just something that you love, something that you haven't done for a long time. And that's usually when the flow of creativity comes back, or when I sort of like ease back into, yeah, giving my big permission to just be myself, which is something that we talked about in our previous discussion. Is creativity is also about being ourselves. Um, so that's I would say that is today the main tool that I use.
And it's so fascinating what you mentioned is that, creativity is basically everywhere, right? That's one part. But the other part is that, you can actually do it very quickly. You can take yourself for the walk, can take yourself for a date. You can tap into your creative potential in so many different ways. And yet I have heard so many times from people like, look, Iwona, I know that you're all about creativity, but I myself, I am not creative. What would you say to a person who is just so convinced that he or she is just not creative and there's like nothing we can do about this?
I think I'll ask them what they did when they were kids, because there's something about creativity, and there's a quote, unfortunately I don't have it with me, but it is about a creative adult is someone who accepts their creative child. It's something around those lines. And when we're a child, we play, we're very playful, we don't have any sort of, especially when we're a toddler, around the toddler's age, we don't have any expectations, we just observe, we experiment, we put our hands in the mud, we go hands in the flour, we just want to try, we're so curious about things. So it's sort of understanding, well, what did you like doing when you were a child? And maybe you might not always remember, but were you more role playing, or were you more building something? Because when we're building, we problem solving. When we're problem solving, we're creating solutions. Was it that you had a blank paper and then you just starting drawing and you didn't know what to draw, but then you came up with all these ideas, or you took a box and that box became your rocket? And it's because that is being creative. It's like finding solutions, is about finding new ideas as well, of turning something into something else. It's about role playing. So I think someone who tells me, and I've had that a lot, people saying I'm not creative. There's a difference between I'm not creative and I'm not artistic. And I think a lot of people, when they talk about creativity, they think about an artistic expression of creativity. So they might say, "Oh, I can't play an instrument, or I can't sing, or I can't draw, or I can't paint, I can't bake." But that is different. That is one side of being creativity. That's the artistic part of it. But then there's the other part of being creativity, which is the one that you talk about using in business or in everyday life as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. It's really fascinating because what you also shared is just like everyone is creative. We are creative in different ways. Everyone can tap into his or her own creative potential. Nevertheless, when you said like, okay, if you are too overwhelmed, just go for a walk, take a break. But many people will tell you, I don't have time. Look at my agenda. It's just so overfull, and I'm just running around in circles. And there is no way I will find the 15 or the 30 minutes to do something for myself. What would you say in this type of case?
But I think that is probably the biggest challenge, especially if you live in big cities, like you said, I don't have time. And I think there's again, for me, there's a misconception between time and energy.
Hmm.
So if you want to, you might not have time, but I think sometimes what you're saying is you don't have the energy to do it. You don't have the energy to go out because you're tired, and or everything's in compressed. So it's also identifying, I think, what's important to you, and that it's going back to your values. I mean, if if for you, um, doing something that you love, and trying to find something like a solution or something, it's important to you, then you will find the time. So it's also about going back to, okay, well, what matters to me? Um, and and I think that's, people would do it for different reason, and that is about, okay, well, why do I want to go for a walk? If it's just for the sake of it, of course you're not going to do it. It's like you're not going to go to the gym just for the sake of it. You're going to do it because there's a reason behind it. And the reason might be you want to be healthy. But why do you want to be healthy? Because then I want to play more with my kids. Why do you want to play more with your kids? Well, because then I can have fun. Why do you have, it's always going under that why, and finding that why is the purpose, that why do you want to do something? Why is the purpose of going for a walk? Not just for the sake of it, but because there is something behind it that is important to you, and you need to find that again.
So maybe the main challenge is actually that many people just don't know what their values are, what are the reasons for them to exist, to do things in general in life.
Yeah, so I think that not always people ask those questions, those existential questions, and you don't have to ask them. But I think that when you are disconnected, and that's what we're talking about, is that disconnection. Yes, it goes back to the values. And that's where, for me, as part of my work, I always start with the value work. You always, and it's very eye-opening for people. They suddenly realize that they hadn't done something. That I remember working with a client a long time ago, and he said, oh my God, authenticity is so important for me, and there's no authenticity into my work. My work is not making me feel authentic. And that, for him, that was like really the thread. And going back to that, said, okay, how can I bring more authenticity? And that will take different forms. But yeah, I think that when people feel misaligned, or disconnected, or lost, or there's something that is challenging, that is blocking them, is always go back to your values. Always is, what do you believe in? What's important for you? And how much are you honoring that? I mean, if for you one of your values is freedom, and you're stuck at a desk, from 8 a.m. to midnight, well, I'm not sure that you're honoring your value of freedom here. So what can you do to do that? And the thing is, a lot of people are going to think about finding the solution right now in that moment, but it takes time. And so they said, oh, of course I don't have time. Well, you might not have time now, but how can we create time? How can we create more hate space? How can we create more and expand it? But the I don't have time, you're not going to be going from I work 12 hours a day to I work 8 hours a day. You'll need to put things into place. But it is by going back to your values.
Well, basically, what you are suggesting is that, in a way, the tool is to face yourself and your fears and whatever disconnection that you're experiencing, and then to address it in a way that will give you the perspective of whatever time and creativity and space and whatever you want to create.
Yeah, I think it is about facing your fears. It is about challenging yourself. It is about um, about what I was going to say. It's about facing your fears, but it's about challenging yourself to go out into your discomfort zone, and trying yourself trying something different, or trying it a different way. If something is not working for you, then try to do it a different way. Try to experiment. And we're going back to experimentation. So we're going back. So for me, there was something that wasn't working for me. And so I had to try something different. I had to experiment. I had to get myself out of where I was, in the zone I was, whether I was comfortable or not, and experiment something else. So of course that will come with fears, because there's something about uncertainty and new.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Also, your recommendation for the book, it's really fascinating. I know the book. I also recommend people the other book, The Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yeah.
Which gives you lots of different perspectives and ideas for how to lead creative life beyond fears in general. So Elizabeth shares many different stories and ideas around how to, first of all, stories from her life, how she overcame many challenges and how creativity helped her to do so. But also in her case, of course, specifically creative writing. But of course, then how you can basically combine everything, how you can be creative, how you can be basically everything at the same time and allow yourself to be your true self in a way.
And I think that's what you're talking here. It's about that sort of inner harmony, and there's something that, and I'd love to have your view as well on all the questions you've asked me. We talked a lot about work-life balance, but I think that is putting so much pressure on people because life is chaotic. I'm sorry, life is chaotic and the world we're in is chaotic. But if we address it into a work-life integration, and as you just said, we start putting all the pieces of who we are and start integrating them one by one, then we become whole. But if we were trying to find that balance, we're always going to be out of sync in one thing. But it's about, to me, it's about integrating, and I feel like that's what you've mentioned. But yeah, I'd love to have your perspective on that subject, and what are the tools that you have found or you are using today, and what is your experience about the challenges and the fears and everything we've talked about so far?
Thank you for that question. Thank you for sharing. So maybe we can start with the classical work-life balance, which I really don't believe that can exist, because how it's understood is, okay, we have an agenda, and here on Monday morning at 5 a.m. I'm putting meditation class, and then in the evening at 10 p.m. I'm putting whatever conversation with a best friend, right? And that classical way of work-life balance, I don't believe it really can help us to live very sustainably long term. I think it's just a construct, yet another task to accomplish, yet another thing on my to-do list. How I do believe that work-life balance is possible, but we need to decide what that means for ourselves. So for one person, it can mean, okay, I go to the gym in the morning, I meditate, I eat breakfast, and I work from 9 to 5, and then I go home, I go for a run, whatever. For someone else, it means like for me, it means, okay, I have my goals and I have my visions. And now the question, okay, what do I feel right now to do at this particular moment? What are the things that I really would like to do? What are the things that I would love to accomplish? And it's kind of a different perspective because I don't force myself to do something because whatever. It's more like going with the flow on the daily basis. Of course, it's not always possible, and I also have responsibilities, but I try to find this balance in a way that, okay, if I know that I need to accomplish something today, I also know that I will spend some time to do my art or to do other creative things that help me to balance everything. So as you mentioned, it's more like integrating all the different pieces of ourselves into our system and into our daily work, our time that we have. And I believe, because many people talk about, exactly the point I mentioned before, I don't have time for these things. They don't bring any value. I don't know, how I could even find time for these things. So for me, it's rather the question, or how I understand it, is that the more I create or the more I put into the world, the more I focus on things that I really enjoy and they bring value also to my clients, the more my time expands. I know it sounds like a bit spooky, but that's how I feel, because I don't feel like I am forced to do something because someone stays here and tells me you have to do right now, otherwise you're going to get fired. It's more like, okay, I do it because I truly believe in that, and I have this wonderful collaboration with my clients, with those people, with other people, and I really believe that we can accomplish something together. And if we have a goal and a mission, yes, this is exactly what we were doing together, and I'm super happy to do it, right? And the other part that I believe is missed very often in the work-life balance world is that there is a huge lack of trust in organizations. When we talk about work-life balance, everyone at the end talks about KPIs. So that's the KPIs. You need to accomplish them by the end of the month. If not, you're in danger. Or we need to talk. If not, we need to talk because clearly something goes wrong. And I think there's a complete kind of mismatch between how the work-life balance should be understood and should be lived, and what is happening in the real world. So that's a little bit for me. That's why, all of this type of tiny pieces, also how to balance yourself, like you mentioned, go for a walk, create a date time for yourself, do whatever creative you like. I feel like that's all the different components can be integrated in our daily lives. We just need to allow ourselves to voice our needs and then to say, look, this is how I function. If you put me in the board meeting at 7 a.m. in the morning, I'm not going to be there because I'm just not functioning at this time. But when we do in the afternoon, here you are. I can create anything what you like. So that's a little bit my perspective on the whole discussion around work-life balance.
Yeah, and it makes completely sense, because when you were saying that the more you do something you love and that's answer to your need, the more energy you get. So the more time you create. You don't stretch the time. The time is the same, but you have more energy to put into that, and so you will be more productive. But another thing that I think that for me you said at the beginning was around external validation and internal validation. And I think that when we wait for external validation, then there's a lot of things that we're not allowing ourselves to do. And
Totally.
And we need to give our permission to, as you say, listen to our needs, listen to our wants. Sometimes they can't always be met, because sometimes it's different and we need to compromise. We're in a world where we need to learn to compromise. But we need to understand, okay, well, if that needs is never met, then what can I do to meet that needs? It might not be at work, it might be outside the work, or that means that maybe the work is the wrong environment and I need to look for something else, and that might not happen straight away. But is that expectation that we need to have external validation that I think that a lot of people are still seeking, are still looking for. That is, I think, for a lot of people, blocking.
I totally understand that the question is, why do we need the external validation? Well, that's the question we should ask ourselves individually. So I don't. I mean, like, I'm always happy when someone comes and, I don't know, give me a good feedback or likes my work and stuff. But that's nothing that defines me. You know, there are other things that define me as a person, as a human being in general, and that's definitely not the external validation. Of course, it wasn't always like this. I also had to hit the wall. I had to hit the very bottom to realize what is really important to me. Coming back to what you mentioned before, to realize what are my values, what are the things I am striving at, what are the things I really love doing, what are the non-negotiable things in my life, and creating the inner and outer environment for myself to truly thrive. And of course, when you have this very strong foundation of knowing yourself, of course, we spend our whole lives just getting to know ourselves, but still the whole process of just knowing yourself and deciding, oh, that's important for me, that's not important for me, that's what I allow in my life, that's what I don't allow in my life, that's my values. When you have this foundation very strong, very strongly created, then our creation or our work creates just completely different value. And then the external validation just doesn't matter, really. It just, or we can also say it doesn't exist, because we are just so much in tune with who we are and what we want to create in this world and what we want to bring and what are our values, then nothing else really matters. And I do understand, because I also know many people who struggle a lot. That's the disconnection you mentioned before, who struggle a lot in the world of unlimited societal expectations that make them extremely unhappy. So the question is, what would you choose? If imagine you have this choice, because we all have this choice. Would you choose to be happy as a person for yourself based on your strong values, or would you choose to continue to be unhappy because you follow the external societal expectations?
And what have you found that has helped you? You said you hit the wall. There was a time when you were maybe seeking for external validation. What has helped you to shift into that? Now I do my work. I know where I am. I know my needs and my values. But so that's the result. But what has helped you to do that shift?
Well, thank you for this question. So first of all, I also hit my rock bottom some time ago, and it actually shuffled all of my, let's say, all of my life cards, if you wish. It changed absolutely everything. And getting out of this kind of, when I went through the process, I asked myself, okay, what's important here for me? If I know I'm the only person in the world right now to decide, and I have the freedom to decide what are the things that are important to me, and how do I want to lead my life moving forward? How do I want to lead myself moving forward? And in this case, I did lots of things that you mentioned before. So I was very sick for a very long time. I couldn't work. So the only thing I could do, I was going for long walks to the forest. And I basically spent time, just walking through the forest and doing absolutely nothing, listening to the birds, listening to the leaves, singing, on the trees. That's everything what I did. And just sleeping and kind of getting the physical strength back, but also getting the psychological and mental clarity of what is important to me. And I knew at that time that what is important to me is what I mentioned before, finding the right work-life balance for me, finding the right clients, the right environment where I know that I can truly thrive without sabotaging myself, or without shrinking myself or my gifts or my talents because someone expects me to be smaller than I truly am. But then, of course, what helped me, and I'm so grateful for also for new technology, what helped me in this time was spending lots of time just creating things, for example, digital art, putting my ideas into the world through digital art, putting my stories through writing, writing love letters to myself as a person, thanking myself for all of the different paths that I went through, for all of the different challenges, for the courage I had really to go through them, and then for the courage for myself to face the troubles and traumas I went through. And I think I spent lots of time really clearing up the space, kind of letting go of different experiences that really troubled me for many years. And then when I was on the other side, it was just like, okay, and what can I do now? And I think also what helped me a lot, and that's something that I really cherish, were the conversation with a few people who stand next to me and just basically told me, we are not going to leave you, whatever happens. And I'm truly, truly grateful to them, because they had all of the reasons to leave me. I was basically not functioning, if you wish. But they didn't. And I'm truly grateful that I could, at that time, at the really difficult moments, I could express myself and to them and share my struggles. And I feel like very often we forget that, very often we are in the environments that don't allow us to be ourselves, don't allow us to express ourselves. And that's just so important. And what I learned from that is really in creating, but also joining the environments where you can be yourself is actually the most important thing. And there is this beautiful metaphor, saying that if you see that the plant is not growing, you shouldn't blame the plant, you should blame the soil. But if you take the plant and if you plant somewhere else and it grows beautifully, it's because the soil is the right one, the environment is the right one for the plants to grow beautifully. And I feel like that's the beautiful metaphor that I have been following since that time.
So it sounds like you've always sort of like tweaked your environment just to, in that search for the right environment for you to thrive. But there's something that I wanted to go back to that you mentioned is almost when you went back to writing and you went back to creating, you did it for yourself. You didn't do it for anyone else. And I feel that sometimes when someone said, oh, they want to create for others, again, to have that validation, to have that external validation. But first and foremost, we need to create for ourselves.
Exactly.
And then once we've done that, then we will find the people who are connecting with us and create that community. And that community might be our community and it will be different from someone else. But first and foremost, we have to do it for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Is that a bit new experience?
Absolutely. And that's actually probably the reason why some of the things I started doing, like writing, creative digital art and other things, have become in a way externally successful. Because I just didn't have any expectation. I just sat down, write the text and publish this. And then I did that all over again for months and months and months of, and the same with digital art. But I did it exactly for myself. That was part of my healing process. Really, just to give myself the time and the grace to sit down, be with myself, and just pour my heart and soul into a piece of paper or into the digital art pieces that I created over the time. So that's 100%. And I saw that many times also with other people that I met and I have been working with, is that when we truly allow ourselves to create without any expectations, that's exactly the moment when the magic happens. That's exactly when the best ideas are just there, you know?
And it's like, yes, I was going to go back to that. It's like when you're let go of any expectations and you have that freedom and you give yourself that permission. And I think that's what happened when you go for a walk in nature, or sometimes some people said, I've just had the best idea while having my shower. Is because in those moments we let go of any expectations.
Exactly.
Our brain is kind of like free and not thinking, and then the ideas come. And if we kind of like let the idea comes and then follow the ideas, and it might be might work, might not work. But I think that another thing, and I'd like your input on that, is a lot of people, I fear, are trying to find the right answer or the right way to do it. But I want to say that is no right or wrong. Is in expressing yourself through a creativity or bringing ideas is about being authentic and doing it your own way. So what's your experience on that, and what's your input
on that? Absolutely, what you mentioned, it's so true, and we are all individually extremely creative, but creative differently, right? And one of the things that I have been practicing over the years is creative experimenting. And how I think about this is in any aspect of your life you wish. For example, you know, in a business idea, if I have a business idea, I will just go like create a very fast product or service and just go and test it on the market and see what is happening. But I would call it creative experiment. So if it doesn't work, well, fair enough. It doesn't work. There's no interest. What can we do, right? It's just like giving yourself the permission just even to go and test these things. And if it doesn't work, then well, that was just a creative experiment, you know. But if it works, that's fantastic. So over the years I created and published, you know, many things and many products and services, and many of them just fail, if you wish. But you know, failing here in this case, or to fail means first attempt in learning. And many of them worked perfectly well, and I was super happy about the results. So I feel like when we label things we are doing in our private or professional life as creative experiments, we take out the whole pressure from our shoulders. And that's a completely different foundation for creation in general, right? Because we just don't feel pressured to achieve something right away. So that's definitely something that helped me a lot to do many things. Creative experimentation, yeah, that's a huge part of my life these days.
So I think that, just to summarize, is going back to those experimentation and then just
Yeah,
exploration and trying things as an experiment, not as I'm going to get the result and I'm going to get the next 1,000 followers, you know, with just that, or I'm going to get the next, you know, whatever it is that you're looking for. But it is about, I'm going to experiment, I'm going to be curious, I'm going to explore, I'm going to see what's going to come out. And as you say, sometimes, you know, it will work, sometimes it won't. And often the best ideas come from the worst mistake, because
absolutely.
something that we thought, okay, is going to work, and it doesn't work, but actually because it makes us think, it makes us take a different perspective, and it makes us kind of like question things as well. So if we're able to experiment, be question and explore, then always having that, okay, well, okay, that didn't work this way, but let's see if I take it from a different angle, or if I approach completely differently.
Exactly. And yes, and for that, you know, what helped me over the years, I actually kind of created this framework for myself already many years ago, but it just became, or it just became so much more important in the last years, was kind of the framework of three things. One is ideas, so which means every idea is a good idea. So we need to understand that equally by default, every idea is a good idea. The second one is sky, which means even the sky is not the limit. So you can be very wide with your ideas, experiments. You can really daydream on such a high level that these ideas can seem ridiculous to yourself, to you. And the third one is trust, which means I always call it also when I run workshops for corporations, for example, I say what happens here stays here. And I feel like very often what happens is that there is this lack of trust in institutions. And that's the reason why people in the institutions themselves, they cannot really be creative or be curious or experiment or innovate at all. So very often the trust component is missing. But if we have this framework in place, that's exactly where I observe also running different public workshops. That's exactly where the true creativity, the true innovation can happen.
Yeah, and I guess that you're talking about organization is trusting your people and the people to trust the organization is just not a one-way trust. It's both ways.
Of course,
but it's
also
the trust ourselves.
Exactly.
It starts with trusting ourselves.
Yes, exactly, and creating for ourselves the environment where we can truly say, I got this. I trust myself. I have, I'm very resourceful. There are so many possibilities for me to establish something, to do something, kind of having this, maybe we can call it also the alignment within ourselves, that we are, in a way, good enough. And I feel very often the struggles people are facing are because they don't believe they're good enough. They don't believe they're worthy of accomplishing anything or of putting things out there, or very often what I observe, many people just compare themselves to other people and feel like they will never achieve that. But for me, the solution for that is always, the suggestion for that is always just go and do it. Because when we talk about these things, we don't do it. When we reflect too much, we don't do it. There's really just like creating a creative experiment and just go with that, go with the flow and just publish these things and make this call and just say this person that you like her or him, just there are just so many ways that we can really allow ourselves to express ourselves really authentically on our daily basis.
Completely. And I feel that it's a good place to wrap up.
Marie, again, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for this very fruitful conversation. I just learned so much today about you and your experiences and all of the amazing creative tools that you have chosen for yourself and you have experimented with over the last years. And I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Creative Bites. It's been a pleasure sharing these stories and insights with you. Remember, creativity is all around us, ready to be discovered, nurtured, and celebrated. I'm Iwona Fluda, and until next time, keep creating, keep exploring, and keep inspiring. Thanks for listening, and goodbye for now.